Hello, my fellow Ripplers. This is Chris Miles, your cash flow expert and anti-financial advisor. Welcome you out for a wonderful show, a show that is for you, and it's about all of you, those of you that work so hard for your money, and you're ready for your money to start working harder for you now. You want to work because you want to, not because you have to. You want to have that cash flow, that freedom, that prosperity today, not 30 or 40 years from now, but right now, to be able to have that life that you love, to do what you love while you can still live, while you still have life in you. And it's not just about having your own life of comfort and ease and freedom, which is amazing, but it's about so much more. It's about being able to create a ripple effect through the lives of others, because as you prosper, you can use your blessings to bless the lives of others too. And that is the ripple effect I'm here to create, guys. Thank you for allowing me to create that ripple effect through you. And thank you again for binging, for sharing with others, for creating conversations, right? Because the only way to elevate your success is to elevate your conversations of success as well. And guys, you guys are doing an amazing job. Thank you so much for being a part of this and allowing me to create a ripple effect through you. As a reminder, check out our website, Moneyripplescom. Not only do we have the great ebook, Beyond Rice and Beans, that you can download for free, which will help you find money, especially if you're looking for cash to be able to use and be able to create more freedom. There's also great blogs. There's even videos of this very episode being posted as well. So check that out, as well as our YouTube page. So check those out. Today, guys, so again, I get this all the time because I get it. When the rest of the world is telling you to believe one thing and you're trying to do something different, it's hard to break that pattern, right? Hey, we're witnessing this in the world right now. There's debates going on between majorities and minorities and everything else, and it's creating a lot of debate. But the one thing you don't see many people debate is actually in the realm of money, right? When it comes to money, most people would agree, going with the mainstream advice, is spend little, save a lot, save it in your mutual funds like your 401ks and get that employer match because it's quote unquote free money. Stay out of debt. Do all these things that you're supposed to be doing that should somehow create freedom. But guys, it has not worked, period. Now, you might think that somehow it's worked. Now, we might look back to grandparents' generations, but understand is that there's a ton of workers funding their Social Security and other things. They had pensions. We don't. There are pensions right now. There's school teachers right now out of pensions, like running out of money. There's states that are bankrupt right now, government workers that aren't getting the things that were given to us even a few decades ago. And right now, it's reliant upon you to create your own freedom. You cannot rely on anyone else. You cannot trust the government will have a decent amount of cash for you to use. It's really up to you. So what's been the answer, of course, over the last several decades? It's been the 401k, right? I'm here to tell you the 401k is a big, fat lie. Now, granted, does it do what people think it does in the sense that you defer taxes? Yes. Can you have employer matches, which is like having free money? Yes. By the way, that just means that they're just not paying you as much, just so you know. It's just a benefit, a company benefit that they add on. They just take it away from your salary anyways. All these things, is it essentially a real tool or a vehicle? Yes, it is. It's a tax code that started back in the Carter era, right? In the late 70s. And by about 1980 and so on, even though most employers didn't really implement it, at least for the average worker, usually by the mid 80s, we started to see the average workers getting offered 401ks. It became more mainstream. Now you have to ask yourself, first and foremost, why did this thing become so big, right? Why did people just keep using IRAs? Or why don't we start making Roth IRAs more popular, since that's been around now for 20 years, more than 20 years. We've had that for a while, but why aren't people going crazy about the Roth? Now, there are some people that say it's great, but the truth is you can't save enough into a Roth, can you? $6,000 or $7,000 a year is not enough to retire on. It's nothing. It's a ridiculous rule that you have the Roth IRA. That kind of loses it. You've got things like life insurance out there that we've talked about before. That is tax-free, much like a Roth, same kind of taxation, but you can dump in a lot more. But even then, guys, if you're trying to rely on a product to get you there, it won't do it. There is no one single financial product that any financial advisor will offer you or your employer will offer you that will get you to financial freedom. And that's what I'm here to talk about today. Specifically, I'm going to focus on the 401k and why it's a lie. Now, understand that when it came out during the Carter era, taxes were much worse. Now, there's an article that one of my good friends sent, and he sent it to me. He said, Chris, you should check this out. Very interesting. It's actually an article in Bloomberg about the 401k dated back on July 21st. Now, this article, I'm not going to quote from it completely because even as I was reading it, I started to see some inaccuracies. The basic premise is pretty interesting. Some of his solutions were different. He was talking about changing the 401k to be more flexible, more rules. I'm not opposed to that, but it doesn't really answer the basic question. But he did bring up some good points about what happened when it started. So for example, the points that were good, right? And by the way, I know these are bad points. And not only was it bad, I decided to look at the comments, which is never a good idea if you want to stay in a good mood. But you look at the comments and people are railing into them saying, hey, this was inaccurate, right? But even with those inaccuracies, I decided to go back and use some of those arguments. People were debating about, well, yeah, taxes were higher, but median income was lower. So I said, great, let's pull up the historical bureaus and find out what the census said, on those things. So anyways, I took a trip back in time to figure out what it really was. So here's the first thing he said. The marginal tax rate was higher in 1980, which is true. Your tax rate could be anywhere. It was tax brackets, but get this. We have 8 tax brackets right now, right? In the federal income tax. The lowest is 0%, of course. The highest is 37%. That is the highest bracket possible. Now, you don't get taxed all that. It's a scale that goes up, right? So as you hit each income bracket, that portion of that income bracket is taxed at that rate. So for example, right now, I'm not exact on the numbers because I just closed them off, but you can basically get taxed 0% from like 0 to about 18,000 bucks, right, per year. So you have 18,000 or less of income, you're not even getting taxed on the federal side. State, maybe, but not on the federal. Then it jumps up to like 10 and then 12 and so on. So the top tax bracket for the median income today, by the way, the median household income today, is about $78,500. So the top tax bracket you even hit is 22%. By the way, the taxes owed as of 2020, if you make $78,500 on the federal tax, I'm not talking about the state taxes, federal tax, you'll pay $10,332, which is just over 13% of your income, your total income. In 1980, the median income was $28,220. And this is across all races. I found out that white races were actually much higher. There's like 51,000. I thought that was really interesting to see how it's such a bigger discrepancy back then. Not surprised, but still pretty surprising how much the average white household was making, was about 51,000. But the median household income with all races, just like I did with 2020, was 28,220. Now, with all the tax brackets, I did all the math on it. The tax brackets, your taxes owed would be $5,663. So just over half of what you pay today for the median income. The difference is, though, it's about a third of the income, right? So that total percentage that you would have paid in taxes back in 1980 was 20%. And also, here's the thing, the top tax bracket in 1980 was 70%. It was 0 to 70% with 16 brackets along the way there. So your top tax bracket, even at the median household income, which wasn't a lot, 28,000 bucks, right, was still in the 32% tax bracket. That's the bracket you're in, the top bracket. So that's where you're paying more. So of course, if you're looking for ways to reduce your taxes, why not find something to give you a tax deferral in hopes that you would live on less? Here's a faulty premise, of course, is that even if you started saving in 1980, let's say you have saved for the last 40 years, and I know some of you have, the problem is you're probably noticing you're not in a whole lot lower tax bracket today, are you? Maybe you earn a decent income, but income goes up with inflation, right? So of course, with inflation, you're still having to make more. Now, granted, right now is a lower tax bracket for sure. So if you happen to retire today and you've been saving for a while, you might be pretty happy. But if you're saving today, this might be the worst time to try to use a tax deferred account, because right now we are in the lowest tax brackets we've been in decades. This is amazing. The tax rates are awesome, even better than when I started working. Why would I try to avoid paying taxes now and go for a future date when it's likely to be higher? And here's the thing, guys, even if the brackets remain the same, because of inflation, you have to consume more money each year to live. If you do, guess what? You're getting taxed on it. By the way, if you're trying to count on Social Security, yes, you can get taxed on Social Security if you pull out more than a certain amount per year. And that's not a lot, guys. It's not a lot. So that's the thing, is that right now, just based on taxes alone, the concept was great back then, which was because there was high taxes. They were trying to pay for crazy stuff. Inflation was going through the roof. It made sense, right? It made sense to say, hey, the tax brackets are ridiculous. I'm likely to be in a lower tax bracket because there's so many tax brackets. It's not hard to get to a lower one. So it was easy to kind of contribute to that and lower your tax bracket. but you're delaying that tax for the future. You're not really saving any taxes when you do a 401k. In fact, you save nothing. And remember, your employer's contributions are going in as well, tax deferred, and they come out taxed. So that's a big one right there. Now, here's the thing is that people will say, okay, Chris, got it. What's the alternative? What about now? What's going on today? Like, what would you recommend? Here's the thing, guys. Again, I'm never going to make blanket statements. I'm not going to make blanket recommendations. I'm not going to give investment advice on the show. That's because it's illegal. I can't do it, right? But let me give you an example of what can happen. Because here's the other problem with the 401k that's a lie. Now, people think with a match, right? This is the other big argument I get all the time. They're like, Chris, with a match though, that's like a 50% match. That's like a 50% return, or 100% match is like a 100% return. So guys, I decided to do some calculations. I said, let's do it by the numbers. That was another criticism on this guy's thing. They said he didn't really go by the numbers. He's right. He didn't. He was given more conceptual stuff. Again, this is why I'm not really sharing the article, because it's good, but it's not great, right? It's not something you take as gospel for sure. So look at it this way. Whenever I talk to people that say, okay, Chris, this is what I've been doing. They're like, I'm maxing out my 401k. Now, when we calculate that with the match, because the match doesn't go over usually 5-6% a year anyways, if you get 100%. Most, it's like get a 3% match or something, or 4% maybe. But I said, okay, let's just go for the top that I've seen. Usually I won't see, with employer contributions, I won't see more than $25,000 going in per year. So that's great. Let's just say that's the case. I'm going to run two different scenarios. One of a person that's about 45 years old with $250,000 saved up in the retirement account, that's maxing their 401k for the next 20 years. And then I got somebody who's 25 years old, starting from scratch, also maxing out their 401k, which most people don't do when they're 25. But I'm going to say somebody is staying cheap. They're the ultimate ideal saver, right? And they're saving for the next 40 years and earning this. Now, here's another debate. People say, well, what's the real return? This is why I put the match into this equation, right? With the match, the real rate of return of the market is anywhere usually between 7.4 and 7.6%, depending on the day. That's pretty much the average I've seen, like a 30-year average over time. It's not 10 or 12%. The S&P 500 is doing at best right around 7.5. As of, right now, of July to July of 2020, July of 1990 to July of 2020, going from the first to the first, it's about a 7.47% average. Like a real rate of return. Not 10 or 12. That makes a massive difference when you start looking at 20 or even 40 years down the road. I figured, okay, we got that. But remember, there's also fees in 401ks. Now, this is something that I saw in those comments. People are like, I've got like 0.04% because I use Vanguard funds and all that stuff. Here's the deal, guys. The fees in a 401k aren't that bad. And he even said, he's like, hey, if you can get outside the 401k, your fees will probably be less, right? But here's the deal, guys. Most people never get that. And especially if you have money going to 401k, your fees are at least 1% on average. That's pretty typical. They're just the administrative fees that are inside of 401ks. 401ks, by the way, have like almost 20 different fees they can charge you. So, and they're all embedded within. They don't really make them very public. They don't make them easily known. This is why people say, hey, the market's been up, but my money's not going up, right? If you've ever said that, especially if you've been in the market long enough, you've felt this or noticed it before. You're like, hey, the market went up, but my money didn't. There's something wrong. This is part of the reason. Fees are coming out. So I actually went kind of on the high end. Usually I don't see people netting more than 6% rate of return. I put this at 6.25. I bonused you 0.25% because the truth is my point's still going to win out even if I'm overly liberal with these numbers, right? And not even being conservative. I'm actually being liberal against my own point. I'm playing devil's advocate against myself, right? So 6.25%. Again, guys, I know the numbers are going out because I just know a few of you guys are going to try to run the numbers yourself. So this is why I'm doing this. So anyways, here's the deal. So I took that person. I said, hey, what if you're 45 years old? You've got $250,000 in your 401k as of now, which I know there's several of you that do around this time. You're max funding it. So you're getting in about $25,000 a year with a match. I'm assuming you're making about $120,000 or so a year. If you're making less, it's less, right? But I'm putting this up, kind of on a more conservative end where somebody might be max funding this. So you're getting in a total of $25,000 a year. At 6.25%, after 20 years, you will have about $1.84 million. So you have nearly $2 million. Now you might think that's a lot, but you got to understand there's another thing working against us, which is inflation. Now I went conservative on this number. Again, playing devil's advocate against myself, but I just decided to make this a number conservative. I put it at a 4% inflation rate. Do not trust what the government says about what their consumer price index and the inflation rates are. They're messing with those rates to slow down the increase on Social Security payments to you. So they're trying to let that money stretch and last longer. They're manipulating those numbers. In real life, though, if you notice your real life, it's not too far-fetched to say, about every 10 to 15 years, my lifestyle has to kind of double. Like what I'm living on today, I've got to have about double that within 15 years. If you're living on $4,000 a month back in 2005, you're probably living on about $8,000 a month now. Again, changing circumstances with life, that's the thing with inflation. It's kind of weird. You can't really count on it because life situations changes. It can go more or less. But I put it 4%. There's debates that it could actually be like 6 or 7% is more closer to what it's been since we've been taken off the gold standard back in the early 70s. So anyways, I put it 4% just to make it better. Here's the key, guys. When you're looking at lifestyle, because 1.84 million sounds great in 20 years, but when you look at the after inflation adjustment, that's almost like having $840,000. So, and by the way, you haven't paid taxes on this money yet. You still got to pay taxes. So say a quarter of that goes to taxes, you're now left with about $600,000, right? And we'll say $650,000. Again, I'll be overly conservative on this number. $650,000. Here's the key. Again, financial advisors have taught this for years. Some people will say 4% you can live on, right? That you're not supposed to take out more than 4%. That's an old number. That's a number that worked before back in the 70s. Most advisors that if they're up to speed won't say more than pulling out 2 or 3%, especially with people living longer. So if you want your money to last, you don't want to pull out more than 2 or 3%. So what if you pulled out 3% of this after inflation adjustment of $650,000? That means you have about $19,500 a year lifestyle you're living on. You have $250,000 right now. You max out your 401k for the next 20 years. And that's like, that's a lot, right? They're putting in like over 18, 19,000 a year into your 401k only to live on about 19,000 a year after you've paid taxes. That doesn't sound so great, does it? What if you started brand new? What if you're a brand new person coming in? You're like 25 years old, starting from scratch. You start immediately max funding that 401k, just like everybody tells you. You do that for 40 years, 6.25% with inflation working against you. Well, guess what? The ending balance is almost 4.4 million. But after inflation, it's more like just over $900,000. So when you live on that, and remember, you have to take out taxes. So say a quarter of that goes into taxes. You're left with less than 700,000. Again, you're living on about, if you factor in 3%, you're living on about 20,000 a year. It doesn't get any better. This is why I say the 401k is a lie. You cannot retire off 401ks alone. Roth IRA won't get you there by itself, and you can't put in enough to make it work. You factor in, even with a 401k, even with the match, you're max funding it, unless you're making $500,000 a year and you're trying to stuff it full. Most likely you can't even do it that much. No, you can't even do it that much. It doesn't matter. After some point, you actually get restricted in IRAs too. Some of you might say, well, I'm doing a SEP IRA, so I can do more of my income. I know some of you I've talked to, you're putting in $50,000 a year. It doesn't matter, guys. You're putting in $50,000 a year, you just double that number. And by the way, when you're putting in SEP IRAs, you're putting in your own match. So the truth is you're not even getting free money. You're putting in all your own money to then live on about $40,000 to $50,000 a year down the road, if that. You get my point here? Is that whatever you're trying to max fund into it, if you're lucky, if the market smiles on you just right, stays around the average, you're lucky to maybe pull out the same amount of money you're pulling in. So whatever you're putting in, that's about what you can pull out. That's not fantastic, guys. That's actually seems ridiculous. Because you can say, wait, I can just take that money, save it, I can save it, just keep it certain, not have to gamble with the stock market. Because if you do like what happened to my dad, Y2K knocked his retirement down right before he retired. It postponed his retirement 15 years, guys. This is, again, assuming averages. This is not assuming what if the market crashes. What if you're trying to retire next year and the market crashes the next few years? Are you going to wait another 5 years to retire? That's what some are doing. That's ridiculous. It's crazy. It's insane. Now let's look at the alternative, because you say, Chris, what's the alternative? So, we've talked about different things. So I took the example of like AHP. Again, never guaranteed, right? But American Home Mortgage Preservation, you hear their ads on this radio sometimes. They pay 10% a year right now. So what if you did the same thing? But here's the thing, you're not getting an employer match, right? So say that you had that $250,000 sitting in your 401k, you cash it out, right? Well, you might be able to avoid the penalty depending on COVID and the CARES Act, right? but at least with taxes, you pull that money out. Say you lose 60,000 of that $250,000, you're left with 190,000. Okay, there you are. You got 190,000. You can invest it. So say you go and invest it there. Again, this is not a recommendation. I'm just using this as an example of numbers, right? So you get 190,000 left over after you've paid your taxes. You only put in 14,000 a year, not 25, because there is no employer match, and because now you're getting paid that money after taxes. You got to pull taxes out. So even though you might be paying in like 18, 19,000 a year into the 401k, because now you're taking the money out, now you're getting taxed. So I'm actually putting you in what would be viewed as the worst tax scenario, right? Because now you're getting taxed, not putting the money into your 401k. Now it's just coming out. You're using after-tax dollars. By the way, yes, you could invest in AHP pre-tax or with IRA money, but I'm using this as after-tax, where you get taxed every year on the growth. So not only do you get taxed on the money, that of course you actually finally put in, but now the interest you earn, which is at 10%, also gets taxed, and you still have to fight inflation. So, but again, it's at 10% a year, right? After 20 years, here's the thing: the end balance is almost $1.5 million. And this is using this sort of person that's 45 years old, right? So the person that said, hey, I had $250,000, put in 25,000 a year with a match. Now they got 190,000. They've put into something like an AHP type fund at 10%, putting in 14,000 a year. They're just putting their 401k contributions now into this. At 10%, they actually have really about $400,000 less than they had when you're putting in the 401k. You might think, well, Chris, even though they made a better return because there's less money going in, yeah, of course it's less. But remember too, when you're cashing out that money from the 401k, you got to pay taxes. So it kind of actually almost breaks even at that point. And well, actually you might end up paying a little bit more in taxes. So you might actually be a little bit under with the 401k. But remember, the 401k says you should only be pulling out no more than 3% a year, right? The difference is that, again, it's about cash flow, not accumulating money and then trying to live off less than the interest. It's cash flow. Because if you had almost $1.5 million and you're getting paid 10% a year, guess what? Now you're not pulling off, and now using the numbers, of course, now I'll use after inflation numbers. So I just gave you that before. After inflation adjustment, it's about, $667,000, right? So that's about what you got in real dollars after inflation. 667, but you're being paid 10%. It's like having $66,700 a year lifestyle versus what I just said before with about a $19,000 lifestyle. So you're more than triple the lifestyle. Why? Because even though the numbers are end up about the same, the cash flow is way better because the interest that's paying you, the cash flow that's coming from that is at 10%, not at 3%. So that's why you're getting more than triple the money back. Right? And yeah, you'll pay tax on it, but so what? Like even after the other money, you still have to pay tax on that too. So again, same thing. That's the person that one's got 20 years of retirement, right? So understand you can now hit those numbers faster. I use the example with that person that's a fresh start, brand new 25-year-old, right? Starting from scratch. So they just put 14,000 a year into AHP or something earning 10%, right? Well, they're going to end with about 3.4 million. But after inflation, that's only like 716,000. But once again, because even though it's like a $716,000 type of thing after inflation, the lifestyle, that you can have, that you're pulling off 10% a year is 71,000 a year. Much better than going about 20,000 a year, right? Once again, kicks the crap out of it because it's about cash flow, not just about accumulating money. And again, like I said, the 401k, it has to work at the right timing. You have to retire at just the right time. Otherwise, it could work wrong. You got to make sure that taxes don't go up dramatically. I was just pretending the taxes were staying similar, which they may or may not. If taxes go up, you're getting hosed on your 401k. And people often will tell me that, Chris, I don't know, if I was a betting person, I would say that taxes are likely to go up from now. And I say, with the way they're printing money right now, either they're going to cause massive inflation, which if you cause even worse inflation, that means you have to pull out more money, which means still more tax, or they raise tax rates, keep inflation down. So then you now have more money coming out. Either way, you lose when you start using that 401k or an IRA or anything else. Again, there is no product that a financial advisor can offer that will get you to that freedom, to be able to get you to that number. You have to be saving a ridiculous amount of money, over $100,000 a year, in hopes that you're going to make something. Or just live on a really cheap, fixed income type lifestyle, right? Where you just try to do nothing. Don't travel, don't go anywhere, don't visit grandkids, just sit on your front porch and drink lemonade. Why? Not because, you know, you want to, but because you can't afford to go anywhere else and lemonade's on sale at the store. That's why. This is the key factor here, guys, is that it's all about cash flow. And by the way, this is at 10% with no tax advantages. If you do things like real estate, you can make better than that amount of money. And I'm not even throwing those numbers out there. I'm staying on the low side. I'm basically going conservative with my point and a liberal against my point, just to prove a point, which is that there is a different world, a world of much better hope if you look outside what the mainstream's trying to pitch you, and they're selling you. And they're selling you because they make billions of dollars in management fees off that. They want you to keep that money in there forever. They're the ones telling you to live on 2 or 3%. Why? Because then their money keeps growing. Their stock prices keep going up. Their CEOs keep getting paid more. They're making more money because you're not. And guys, that is one of the big reasons why I'm so passionately against things like 401ks, IRAs, which by the way, the government determines the rules and they can change the rules at any time. There's no certainty. There's no planning that can be done in those situations because you can't maneuver with it. You don't even know what the rules are going to be like in 10, 20 years. Unless you're retiring today, you have no clue. And even then, they could change the rules. Look how they're changing the rules on us right now because of a little virus, right? They're freaking out. And they're using that as a way to be able to change rules on us. And we have a very different life today than we had 6 months ago. Wouldn't you agree with that? Why couldn't they change it on you with the financial tools and things like that, the vehicles that they've been recommending? Of course they can. They need more taxes. They know where to go. They go for the people that are the poor and middle class that don't know what they're doing, that are going and investing in these 401ks, have zero tax advantages. And with the match, it's just golden handcuffs. You know, that little employer match, it does so little compared to the cost and the risk. But guys, just like you might have heard Robert Kiyosaki say, he says the people that get the best tax breaks, best tax advantages are either business owners or investors. If you're in that category, if you get out of the employee mindset, you get out of that traditional mainstream mindset, now you can actually have hope to break free. Now, guys, that's the kind of stuff that we're talking about. Again, each of your situations are individual and different. I get that. Sometimes there are rare occasions I think a 401k works, especially if you can pull money out right away. Like I've had people get the match, pull the money out, and go invest it on their own, and it can work great. But even solo 401ks, by the way, guys, for those of you that are investors doing solo 401ks, I don't trust those either because anything can change with those rules. And not to mention, we just don't know. I mean, and plus, if you get sued, I mean, there's other issues that can happen there. You have assets that are exposed that works against you in different scenarios. Either way, money's getting locked up. Get your money out of prison. Get into a place that works for you. If you guys want to know what that is, if you haven't listened to this show, there's great examples of that. You know what? If you're at the point you say, Chris, I think now is the time I got to change my strategy, shoot me an email. Say, Chris, what do you think about my situation? What do you think I should do? Just shoot me an email, chris@moneyripplescom. And yes, I answer my emails. I shocked a guy. He's like, I can't believe you keep telling me to email you. And I finally did it. And that guy, it was a slam dunk. I was like, man, like, I'm so glad you actually had the courage to do it because for him, it was like a 70,000 a year difference, you know, like a passive income that he could create from his current situation. I'm not saying that's you. It could be, it might not be. But either way, if you think there's a calling or a feeling within you saying, I think now's the time to do something different. If the market's recovered, maybe now's the time to do something different right now. While there's still money in the market, you know, while the market is still overvalued drastically, right? This might be the time. So again, if you have questions about that, shoot me an email, chris@moneyripplescom. Guys, I hope this is valuable. I hope you start to see why the 401k just cannot and will not work. And this is why I'm so passionate against it because I've run these numbers over and over and over, and it comes up with the same results. Guys, you can't expect to get something different when it hasn't ever been different. This is how it's been. This is why I left financial advising, and this is why I did something different that gave me different results that got me to retire when other financial advisors can't retire. And by the way, great question for financial advisors. Ask them, hey, did you get financially free off the advice you've been giving? Not from the commissions you're earning, but actually from doing the things you're telling your clients. And I can tell you honestly, I'm doing the things that I tell people to do as well. They don't. They aren't retired off that, their mutual funds and their 401ks and IRAs. They aren't. They are making money by selling you this lie. This needs to stop now. This is why I'm here. This is a ripple effect I want to create. Guys, I hope you share this episode too. Share this with other people. They need to know the truth. This has to stop. There are too many dumb pundits out there teaching this crap because people are putting money in their pocket telling them, hey, you do this, we pay you money. We give you little perks and benefits if you do this. So much money being thrown at these 401ks and other plans so that you buy them and you buy a hook, line, and sinker. But the only person that loses is not the person telling you on the radio, right? Or on the TV or on interviews. Those people aren't losing. The financial companies aren't losing. It's only you. This has got to stop. Guys, I hope this is valuable for you. Make it a wonderful and prosperous week and change your life now. It's all about action and taking action to do something different. Do the opposite of what you've been told to do. Make it a wonderful week. We'll see you later.